Hey everybody, it's Robert Douglas here, and it's today's episode of Deploy Friday, the webcast that Platform.sh brings to you every week to talk about new and exciting topics in the space of web development, web hosting. And today we have an especially exciting topic, in my opinion, because we're going to talk with the team from Blackfire.io. And for those of you who have been watching the news, it was probably on the front page even. Platform.sh and Blackfire.io have merged, meaning we're now all the same company. We're all Platform.sh. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to bring the team on and talk to you about what that merger means, what the product is like, where it came from, and all of that. But let me introduce my guests. So let's go with Jérôme Vieilledent, and then we've got Christophe Dujarric, and then of course we've got Fabien Potencier, who is the godfather of Blackfire.io. So welcome everybody. I'm going to let you guys also introduce yourselves and tell us who you are, where you are, what your role is with Blackfire.io, now Platform.sh. Jérôme, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Robert. My role, I'm a developer advocate at Blackfire.io, and I joined the DevRel team at Platform.sh. So my role is to get all developers used to Blackfire, to train them and listen to most developers and how we can improve the product together with our customers and users.
Awesome. Thank you. Fabulous. Christophe.
Yes. Well, so I'm Christophe Dujarric. I'm located in Nantes, in France. Up until the acquisition, I was Chief Product Officer at Blackfire. I'm now Product Director for the observability tools at Platform.sh, and Blackfire is one of them. I'm one of the persons who listen to the customers and try to offer them solutions with our tools.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. And now to you, Fabien, the
Hello,
godfather
everyone.
of Blackfire.io, as I introduced you.
Yeah, so indeed I created Blackfire.io a few years ago, actually. And Christophe was one of the very first person I brought in. So the idea back then was to create a profiler. Creating a profiler is not something that easy. I saw that a lot of applications were really slow for obvious and not so obvious reasons, and having a profiler is really something that you can leverage, and that's how it started. So I was the CEO of Blackfire. I'm not anymore because we are now part of Platform.sh. Previously, as a CEO, I was, the guy doing everything people don't want to do. So admin stuff, and also some code as well. I have quite a few lines of code in the code base still. And nowadays I'm part of Platform.sh, trying to help with the integration and trying to give some ideas to make things a bit better.
Awesome. And a lot of people also know you as the founder of the Symphony project. It's probably worth mentioning.
Yeah, you can mention that as well. Yeah, sure. So I created the Symphony a lot of years ago, 15, 17 now. Yeah, actually something like that, 18 years ago, I think. I'm still leading the project today. And the great thing about Blackfire is that even if I'm the father of Symphony, quite involved in the PHP world, Blackfire is not only for PHP projects, and we support more languages, and including Python and Go, and a few more that we are working on.
Fantastic. So you got into the history of Blackfire.io a little bit. Tell us, bring us up to speed though. You started just with the need to be able to profile programs. And I think you really did start primarily with PHP at the time. So first of all, can you tell me a little bit more specifically what it means to profile? Because that's a term that's not necessarily one that you use
in a day-to-day development cycle? What does it mean to profile it?
So you should talk about profiling your code on a day-to-day basis, actually, and that's one of the goals of Blackfire. So the whole idea is to actually have a look at the performance of an application. So it can be a website, can be a command line tool. Any piece of code at some point can have some performance issues. And as humans, it's very difficult to figure out what can be slow in a piece of code. And most of the time you're wrong when you're trying to optimize something. You have a piece of code, you want to optimize it, you have great ideas about how you can do that. But most of the time you're wrong. And you need to test that. And the goal of a profiler is to give you a lot of data and information about how your code is actually running on your machine. And it gives you information so that you can understand what's going on, why your code is slow or fast, why it improves or actually gets worse performance-wise. So whenever you think you have a performance issue, you do need a profiler to figure out what to do to fix the problem.
And a profiler, in this case, it basically takes a snapshot, usually of like one request from top to bottom with all of the components. And Blackfire is really incredible because it's got this beautiful call stack interface where you can drill down and you see reds and greens. And what are the implications for profiling in this case versus monitoring? How are they different?
They are very different. So we started as a profiler because there was a market. We were the very first profiler in the PHP world that was not free, I would say, but for good reasons. So before Blackfire, it was all about XHProf. It was created by Facebook, but not really maintained anymore. And you're right about the call graph and all the green stuff and the red stuff. That was the very first motivation I had for Blackfire, having something that is very easy to use and that you can very easily understand. It's very complex to understand raw data, and that was what you get out of XHProf and a lot of profilers out there. And the goal of Blackfire is to really give you all the data in great visualization so that you can really understand things without going too deep into understanding all the data. That was a very long introduction to answer a question, which means that I totally forgot the question now.
No, you're completely answering the question. I was hoping that we could talk a little bit about what the product actually does, so that if anybody's new to it and they're watching this, they can really get a good idea. One of the things that I liked the best when Blackfire came out and we started also playing with it and showing it to our customers at the time was that it filtered out a lot of the noise. If you talk about XHProf as a tool, then the first thing that you were confronted with anytime you looked at that was way too much information. It was like, whoa, did I just open up a Java call stack or something? It was
especially with modern code bases, because nowadays when you have a PHP website, you have a bunch of classes, a bunch of function calls. And the same goes if you are using Django in the Python world. You are using a framework, which means that there are a lot of calls, but most of them, they are not significant enough. So everything that is under 1% of the execution time, you won't need to optimize that. That doesn't make sense. So one of the goals of Blackfire is to really emphasize on things that you can optimize, things that are relevant performance-wise. So indeed, we are not displaying all the nodes, all the function calls, only the ones we think you need to actually have a look at. And that makes a huge difference indeed.
Yeah, and the other thing that I remember very strongly about those first demos was that it also let you quickly switch between the relevant areas of bottleneck, right? Like one of them was CPU, another one was memory consumption, another one was, I think, database queries. How was that conceived of, and how does that help developers really narrow in on the right thing to focus on?
Yeah, when you're thinking about profiling some code, we're talking about time, right? The time it takes to do something. And the time it takes to do something can be more than just CPU time. So if you are computing a big number, whatever, doing some computations, then the CPU is working. But that's not the only thing that actually you need to take into account when you are talking about the time it takes for your code to execute. It's also about the time you are waiting for some I/O to happen. So for instance, if you are doing a SQL query in a database, you're going to wait for the network and for the data to come back and things like that. So having just one way to visualize things is not enough. To get a good understanding on what's going on, you need to have a look at when the CPU is working, when you are waiting for some kind of I/O, if you are memory bound, for instance, and that's the basic things that you need to have a look at. So that's the basic metrics. But then, if you understand that you are I/O bound, it probably means that you are waiting too much on something, and that's where you need to get more information. So you can have a look at the call graph, and it's going to tell you everything you need to know. But if we can give you more information about that without you having a look at the call graph, that's even better. So that's why you can have a look at all the SQL queries executed by the database, how much time it took for the queries to execute. Okay, I'm going to tell you a secret. Most of the time, you don't need a profiler. And you don't need a profiler just because you have too many SQL queries executed for a page. And most of the time, applications are slow just because they are executing thousands of SQL queries per request. And that's a nightmare, really. And that's also because we have, all kind of abstractions on top of the database. And that's what most of the time makes things slower. So the idea here is to give you the data. So we can tell you, okay, this specific SQL query was executed 1,000 times for this request. And all of a sudden, you don't need to have a look at the call graph anymore. You know that you need to optimize that number. And if you do so, you will optimize the performance by a huge margin. And then when you think that you actually optimize that SQL query because you have less of them, there is this great Blackfire feature, which is the way you can compare two different profiles. So you take a profile before the optimization, you optimize the code, or you think that you are optimizing the code, and then you take another profile after the optimization, and then you can compare things. And that's where you have the colors in the call graph, because we have a diff between two profiles just to check that you actually made the code perform better.
Amazing.
And that's very important. If you're not able to do that, you are shooting in the dark, really. So you think you are optimizing things, but if you can't double check that it is actually optimized, then you have done nothing.
Incredible. Yes, Christophe.
I would just take this opportunity to contradict Fabien and say that even Fabien Potencier, the creator of Symfony, does need a tool to realize that his site, symfony.com, is doing too many SQL queries. And that happened not that long ago, where he sped up Symfony by 3 times, was it?
Yeah, and that's something very interesting because it happens a lot. Someone is trying to figure out why the backend is slow. And they've been working on that for weeks, sometimes for a month. I also have examples where people were trying to optimize the backend page for years. And all of a sudden, they realized that they could use Blackfire. They're trying Blackfire, they create a profile, and in less than 10 seconds, they understand why they have a problem, and they fix the problem right away. So it can take years to find out that actually you have somewhere a query that is not optimized, or the number of queries is not optimized. So it was kind of, a joke that you don't need a profiler, but most of the time the profiler tells you something that is really, or should be really obvious, but it's not.
Incredible. So, Christophe, I wanted to come to you, and because you're the second person from Blackfire.io that I met. Were you were also quite early to the project and to the company, right? What's your personal history getting into Blackfire?
Getting into Blackfire. So you mean before Blackfire?
Well, yeah.
Really?
Where did you come from? How did you get into Blackfire? What did you do with the company? And you've already explained what you're doing now at Platform.sh, but fill in the gap there.
Well, I saw an open door. There was some light in, and I just said, "Hey." Well,
as a very metaphysical, metaphorical description of your history.
Yeah, it's more or less this. I mean, I'm a French engineer, and I've always seen my engineering studies not necessarily as something that would lead me to a career in technology. Even though I've always been interested about technology, I was more interested about what does it bring, as solutions to people, and working around those topics. So really, on the marketing, on the sales, on the business part in general, and then, well, basically, yeah, that's the whole point of product management in general, is really to find a solution to a user's problem and then make sure that you can actually build a product out of it, which is profitable, which has a potential of growth, etc. My very first opportunity was maybe a lot of people say, and I would agree with them, that it was a bit funnier industry because it was in the car racing and video games. So we were building a very new generation of video games where you would remove the artificial intelligence from the opponents and replace it with real-time GPS positioning. So you could take part in Formula One race and have your own car on the grid in a video game in real time.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, it was.
When you got to Blackfire.io and you did a lot of the product and sales and marketing, you were kind of a one-man show for a while, if I remember. What are some of the really great use cases from the customer perspective that you ran across? Where were your first examples where you worked with a customer and you just saw the value that you were giving to them?
That's an excellent question. There's been quite some different occasions where we really could help. I think one of the key historical customers of Blackfire is CCM Benchmark. So they're part of the Figaro group, so French media. And what's really interesting is that they've really quickly adopted Blackfire with all of its power. So beyond what Fabien has mentioned in terms of profiling and the fact that you should profile your code in development, in production, compare. So keep on profiling actually, so that you know exactly how your code behaves. There is an amazing feature in Blackfire that makes it possible to integrate it in a day-to-day automated testing pipeline. So pretty much like you have unit tests and integration tests, you can actually have performance tests running with Blackfire. And they are those who first adopted that part of Blackfire's power. And yeah, it's something that keeps on running on their system. Where when we actually saw that potential, that very quickly led us to an even tighter integration with Platform. So actually, it was the start of an amazing journey. Because of Platform's technology, it would make it so much easier to have this part of Blackfire running. So the automated tests, whenever you work on a bit of code, and that you have that branch that is deployed automatically with the magic of Platform.sh, then that's the very moment that all of Blackfire's power performance testing can play.
Right. It allows a customer, or a developer, a team to say use GitHub if they're comfortable using GitHub to manage their code, do their code reviews, but in the background they've got in addition to whatever unit tests or functional tests they might be running, They've got the profiling tests as part of the pipeline gatekeeping that, and since it's running on an environment provided by Platform.sh, then it's the same services, it's the same data, it's the same code build. So you're not going to profile something on the wrong environment, right? It would be really silly to profile your site on Circle CI and then deploy it onto something else where everything's different, right? Like it would maybe reveal something, but it would probably also reveal some of the wrong things because the environment changes. I imagine with profiling, having the environment be really identical from test to test is the only way that diff that Fabien mentioned is actually relevant. Otherwise, you don't know what's the truth and what's just jitter, right?
Yeah, and that's something very important, and that's why we think that you also need to have a profiler in production. And that's kind of counterintuitive. Most of the time, you do not install a profiler in production because there is some kind of overhead, and you don't want overhead in production, of course. And that's one of the key features that we have in Blackfire, because obviously in production you have more data than you have in development. It's not all about lorem ipsum, it's about real data. And if you have an N+1 database issue, you will get that in production. You won't have that in the testing or development environment. And that's where...
I'm sorry, an N+1 database issue, what is that precisely?
Okay, so you have a query, SQL query, and you are getting all whatever. You're getting a person that is writing a blog post, and you are joining with the blog post table. And instead of getting just one record from the database, because of the join, you get all the blog posts from that person. So in the test environment or on your development machine, you have one blog post associated with your user.
Because there's not very much data. You're using test data.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about 2 queries, no problem. But in production, you have 10,000. And all of a sudden, it's not 1 + 1. It's 1 + 10,000. And 10,000 queries in production, that doesn't work anymore.
So the value here with Platform.sh plus Blackfire is that because Platform.sh copies the entire data set into the development environment, you can actually test during your development phase on a precise copy of actual production data, and it's fast and easy and cheap to set up, so you don't have to do MySQL imports or anything like that. Got it. Yeah. Cool. Jérôme, I wanted to get to you and ask you the same question that I asked to Christophe. What was your personal inroad into this product?
Well, I'm around in the open source world for years now, like speaker in different conferences, including Symfony conferences. And this is how I discovered Blackfire and Christophe, actually, because he was at every conference, so we started to chit chat about all this. And at that time, I was working for Easy Systems, which is now called Ibexa. So I was part of the engineering team, and we met in New York City in a conference, and he was talking. He was giving a talk about Blackfire, and the first interest we had together is that, sorry, what you're saying with this suggestion with Blackfire, no, it doesn't work with Ibexa, and you shouldn't do that. So then we started to discuss a lot about Blackfire and all, and well, at some point I really wanted, because I have a developer background and then lead developer, and I even had my own company at some point. But I wanted to evolve to something a bit different, and so Developer Advocate was something that rang a bell for me. And well, then Christophe talked with me about this opportunity at Blackfire, and this is. Now the journey began 2 years ago, with Blackfire, which actually I didn't really know about. I knew what it was about, but not really used to it. And so I discovered all of its magic.
So now that you're indoctrinated into that magic and you've had a chance to talk to many developers and maybe even work with some developers one-on-one, what would you say is the top reason that a developer doesn't use Blackfire? Like, you talk to them and you show them all the magic. What holds somebody back after they've seen that greatness? In your opinion, what are the reasons why somebody wouldn't use it?
Well, usually it's bound to the friction or the imagined friction of installing such a tool. You know, like it's exactly the same friction that people have, like when they when you talk about to them about Xdebug for step debugging. And I said, no, this is just a zero configuration now. And so usually it's about that, and also fear for their production environment.
So let me make sure I understood what you just said there. So you're saying that you've run into developers who have already had experiences with step debugging tools like Xdebug in the PHP world, where that might be really hard to set up. And I can confirm, as a former PHP developer, I probably had to read 5 to 7 tutorials on getting Xdebug working on my different IDEs and environments over the years, and it was never straightforward and easy and not even consistent. So like I might have been personally burned by that myself. So you're saying that these people are coming into the conversation with a bias against the whole idea of setting something like that up. Maybe like the idea of like, why can't I just sit here and like change a line and hit refresh, change a line and hit refresh, change a line and hit refresh? What's missing, right?
Yeah,
did I get
exactly.
it?
Yeah, that's exactly that. But actually, maybe the first reason people don't use Blackfire is that a lot of developers don't have a clue about what a profiler is and what a profiler can do for them, and especially Blackfire. So some of them already know XHProf or Xdebug profiling, and if they tested them out, they're probably like you said before, so overwhelmed with all this information that you get lost into it.
Yeah, the value might be there, but you don't know how to get it out.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't understand how to process that data, but this is for developers, people who are already aware of what a profiler is, but most of them don't have a clue of what it is and how they can be helped with such a tool. And then, well, I can do a demo for it and say, oh, where have you been all these years?
So you've been there when developers have had that aha moment, and all of a sudden the value has become clear to them, and they become excited. What happens after that? Do they try to adopt? Do they succeed? Do they see the value? Do they come back to you later and say, that was great, or didn't really work out? What are your experiences with that? What's your success rate?
Success rate when I have the opportunity to directly discuss with developers is quite high, because they directly see the value, but then they have to negotiate with their company to subscribe and have a budget for it. So that might be the most difficult moment, but for them, for transform and have.
There is a free tier as well, right?
There's a free tier, but which is quite limited and limited to local environment, especially, and for which you don't get all the value, because most of the value come from, for example, recommendations from a profile. So you profile your local application or in production, whatever. Automatically, Blackfire will trigger built-in tests and suggests you to change things. Okay, hey, your PHP ini settings for the session garbage collector is wrong, and so you should change this, or you should use the preload opcache feature, because you're using Symfony and that's really cheap to use, and you're getting 20% improvement. So this comes automatically, but only for paid subscription. So The free tier gives you the same approach, the same value as XHProf or Xdebug can give you, plus the diff and the clean call graph.
Thank you. So before we move on to the next part of the show where I want to talk about the acquisition, the merger, the integration of the two products, we haven't talked about the APM part, the application performance monitoring product that you guys have also built. Fabien, do you want to introduce that to us?
Sure. And that's a confusion that we have a lot. People don't realize that a profiler and an APM or a monitoring tool there are two different tools, really. So we were compared with New Relic or companies like that. And one of the problems that we have is that the profiler is something that you use on a very specifically when you have a problem or when you want to work on performance. That's not something that you enable for every request.
Yeah, maybe it's worth, sorry to interrupt, but maybe it's worth really saying when you do a Blackfire profile, it like shoots off 7 requests or something like that and uses some averages from those to make the profile. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. And the idea is to have a stable basis so that you don't, you have something stable from one profile to the next. And that's very important because we want to be able to do some comparisons. So we want some stable data to be able to work with. But so the profiler is something that has zero overhead in production because it is disabled by default. And whenever you want to work on performance, you proactively ask for a profile. When we are talking about the monitoring tool, that's very different. A monitoring tool is actually something that monitors all the user requests. So whenever someone comes to your website, all the requests are actually monitored, which means that we are getting data for all the traffic that it's your servers. So it does have an overhead, obviously, which means that we can gather less data that we can with a profiler. So it gives you less interesting information, but it gives that information for all the requests on your website. So the monitoring tool is something that works automatically for you. So there is nothing to do. And it pushes you the data and the recommendations. And the profiler is something that you need to enable when you want to work on performance issues. It doesn't have any impact for your end users. And it gives you more data and more useful information out of your code base.
So the APM tool is very useful then for seeing trends. Like you can see the spikes in traffic, you can see the spikes in CPU usage, and you can see if something's trending up or down over time, and it can give you a warning signal if you need to do something like resize your infrastructure or investigate if that last push that somebody deployed actually introduces a regression that you only see over time. So I imagine there's a whole class of performance bugs that might not actually show up on a profiler, but might show up on a APM. Is that true?
Yeah, when the performance degrades slowly but steadily, the profiler won't be able to catch that, whereas the monitoring tool is able to do that. One big difference between the profiler and the monitoring tool as well is that an APM is only useful in production because you need the end user traffic, whereas you can use the profiler in the whole life cycle, development, testing, staging, and production. So it's really about two different tools, same technology, of course. It's the same mechanisms that get the data out of the runtime, but the use cases are very different. And I think it's great that you can have with Blackfire the profiler plus the monitoring tool. They are very complementary.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to speak a little bit just from the point of view of what it was like being in Platform SH, discussing whether or not we should write a love letter to Fabien and ask him if we could buy the company. So before we made that decision, we were looking very closely at our reception, Platform SH reception on the market. And we look at different things for that. We look at analyst reports, customer testimonials, obviously, but also we've been paying a lot of attention to the G2 Crowd website, where they make a whole series of different quadrants and ask people for direct feedback on various products. And that feedback has been really super helpful. It was also super helpful for us to not to discover because we knew already, but to really see the importance to customers of observability of their websites, web applications, the applications that they were running on Platform SH, where we had deferred product development in that so that we could get other things out the door, and therefore we kind of left our customers hanging. To be honest, we had all sorts of advice like go install New Relic, which is expensive. So when we saw a real strong cluster of customer feedback over time saying you guys really need to do something for APM, I need to be able to understand how my application is performing and to do work on it to speed it up, because as fast as Platform SH is, you can always improve things at the application layer. And if you don't have a tool to help you with that, then you're really just left in the cold. Then you have to install XHProf and Xdebug and do all those horrible things that scare developers. So we inside of Platform SH prior to the merger really viewed this move as a way to fill a big gaping hole in the product lineup, and instead of like building something internally that would maybe in the end replicate a lot of what Blackfire.io does, we found it really attractive to think about the products joining each other, specifically because there was like no overlap. It was a perfect complementary fit. You guys we had a lot of joint customers already who were installing Blackfire.io into Platform SH. We had a native integration where you just had to enable it in the YAML file, and the profiler beacon or whatever you call it, the agent, was there in the environment, so the setup was super easy. So it was very, very, very complementary. So that's kind of like the background. Like that's why we thought you guys were so attractive, and we loved you so much. Since then, since May when we announced the merger, and you guys have been on the team, and it's been great having you in Slack and all of that. What's happened? What's it been like from like signing the papers till now?
That's a very good question. A lot of excitement, and I think we had the exact same analysis. Very complementary products. And I do remember it was 6 or 7 years ago when we started to evangelize the world about Blackfire. And we had a lot of meetings with potential customers. And we said, it's great. You can use Blackfire on your laptop, but also on staging and testing and production and everywhere. And people, they were really excited about that. But at some point, they realized that there was no way for them to have a replica of the production environment in testing or staging. And it was a huge barrier for us to actually, convert people, because they had no way to actually use Blackfire in their entire life cycle, application life cycle. And that's also why I was really excited about integrating Blackfire into Platform SH, because you have the perfect platform to enable Blackfire at any step of the life cycle of application development. So since we started to work with you internally, so first of all, it's very interesting to have a look at all the Slack channels that you have.
We have a lot of Slack channels.
I don't even know how many channels you have, but that's really a lot.
We take the clone instantly concept very seriously. Like,
sure.
need something new, let's make a Slack channel.
Yeah, exactly. That's really impressive, really. It's also very interesting to understand how a hosting platform works behind the scenes. It's all about problems all the time. There's always something somewhere that breaks in subtle ways. And it's very interesting to understand how it works behind the scenes.
There's a different way to phrase that, by the way, Fabien.
Okay.
We're very busy making things better all the time.
Yeah. Of course. You're fixing bugs like everyone.
Like everyone, exactly. But
sure.
It's true. The filter for, and I've seen this in a couple of companies that I've worked for and worked with, the filter for internal conversations and internal communications is really very highly focused on problems. So if you just take a sample of the internal communications, you get a very clear idea of everything that's wrong at any given moment. But nobody's talking about what's right.
Yeah. I know. That's always the same. That's the same with open source.
Yeah,
I get a lot of emails saying that's bullshit. It doesn't work. There's a bug. Why have you broken backward compatibility? I did not. It was not on purpose, right? That's a bug. It's not my fault. But and once in a year, I get one email saying thank you, and it makes my day. But it's very rare.
So to anybody watching out there who might have benefited from the Symfony framework or from Blackfire or from any of Fabien's other ventures, this is a man who really appreciates a thank you email.
And I think that's the same for all open source developers. And even if you're a small contributor of an open source project, having a thank you from time to time, that's always great to hear, really. So to come back to your question, it's also great to be able to discover what you've done with the observability stack that you have now on Platform.sh, and how we can, make everything work together to have a way better platform. One of the things that I really like about a profiler and a monitoring tool is that the more data you have, the better you can give recommendation. And the recommendations are going to be much better and really target to your specific problems, because we have so many data that we can really understand what's going on automatically, and we can give you the right recommendations. So being able to mix application data with low-level container data is going to be a game changer, I think. And we are going to be able to build the next version of Blackfire, and it's going to be amazing. Because we can really integrate things together. And
so that sounds amazing to me, because it means that it's not just 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 30 exactly. Or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Optimistically,
exactly.
Right? Because before you could always use Blackfire and Platform.sh together, and maybe you just paid two companies, but I think the compelling story there is, will we be able to deliver something and achieve something that wouldn't have been possible without the merger? And it sounds like you're saying yes.
Yeah. And maybe it's time to also say that Blackfire is not something that you can use only on Platform.sh nowadays. We are committed to actually deliver a product that works everywhere. So if you're using Kubernetes or Docker containers or whatever hosting companies you're working on with, you can definitely use Blackfire. You won't get all the nice features that we are talking about right now, the integration and things, but it still works, and it will work in the next few years. We do not have any intention to actually stop maintaining the standalone product, and that's very important to us.
Right. Fabien hates emails that say you broke backwards compatibility, apparently. So
yeah, sure.
We want to avoid that. Christophe?
Yeah, I would actually add on top of what Fabien said that, so yeah, indeed, this the fact that we're now part of Platform, for me, is very exciting, because we've been working together since a while, and we've been developing features together, and so a lot of communication already with the teams. But now that we're inside, there's so much more that we can do. I'm starting to discover things on Platform.sh where I'm like, ooh, I'm going to play with this now, and get Blackfire to be integrated with it. But the cool part of that is that because we will do some work to, get the product to evolve and play with Platform, it is actually also opportunities for us to offer more features to anybody who's not hosting their apps on platform. Maybe something is just going to work out of the box on platform, but for us, it's actually also going to be an API that we open to customers that are not on the platform so that they can also benefit from the feature in the end. So, it's really just only good news, basically.
That's good to hear. And Jérôme, what's it like being on the DevRel team now? I used to be part of that team myself, so we just missed each other in passing.
Yeah, well, at the beginning it was a bit difficult because we might not have the same tasks daily tasks, because the DevRel team, especially Chad, was committed to like more writing articles and committed to implement templates for platform. And our work at Blackfire, but also because we're much small, we were a much smaller company, more engaged into support directly, for instance. So now it became okay because we aligned on how we work together, and it's really interesting because I'm really committed to developer experience, and this is really close to DevRel. I know, well, it's also part of products, and we have now a lot of ideas to improve this developer experience based on developers' feedback and also from our own experience. So it's getting really interesting to work in the DevRel team at Platform.sh, because mainly because of that. And,
so you're talking now to customers where you can talk to them as both the Platform.sh customer and the Blackfire.io customer together. Are you seeing many cases of that already existed, or new customers? What are those conversations like? Is it different than when you could only talk to them as the Blackfire.io customer?
Well, it's not really different as before. Well, I haven't had a chance to directly discuss on support with the Platform.sh customers directly, at least yet. But the discussions on Platform.sh Slack, which has one public channel where we can discuss with customers, is one of the places where I can now help and discuss directly there. So it's just another channel, basically.
If you want to talk to Jérôme in that channel, this is where you find him.
Yeah, exactly. And well, we also have like Platform.sh customers reaching out to support support.blackfire.io, and so yeah, that's no real difference. But now I pay a lot more attention to their requests and why maybe somehow why it doesn't work for them to install, because sometimes it happens. It doesn't. They don't manage to trigger profiles or to reinstall the monitoring. So I pay more attention on this because now I know more the platform, what's behind platform containers.
So what's the path right now to somebody listening who wants to go try this and wants to get to the point where, and let's assume that they don't know Platform.sh and they don't know Blackfire.io. Walk me through right now, step by step, all of the things you have to do from now till when I actually get a profile of a real app when I see that value.
Well, for now, what you need to do first is to create a project on Platform.sh.
Which is easy, hard, medium?
Yeah, it's really easy. to create a project on platform and directly add the integration to GitHub. This integration is really amazing. I mean, being able to deploy automatically your an environment based on your pull request is really amazing.
So you pick a template that uses PHP, Python, or Go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then after that, you just have to. Well, let's say you're using PHP. You only need to activate the Blackfire extension, say in your platform.yaml, and you're done.
So I need two accounts still, right?
Yeah.
We haven't been able to integrate the accounts system in the 2 months. We need a little more time than that. So right, actually, you need to sign up for a platform, and you need to sign up for Blackfire. Is that right?
But actually, you can now use the platform.sh accounts directly on Blackfire.
See, I am uninformed. It's really good that we did this public webcast so that I could find that out.
And now you realize that the Blackfire team is really, really fast at developing new features.
And right? I thought you guys were just sitting around like drinking sodas or something. No,
not yet.
Okay, so I can use my Platform.sh account to get onto Blackfire, and I don't have to sign up twice. That's already half the work.
Yeah, that's already half the work. You still have to get your credentials, set your credentials to your console, but at some point,
how do you do that?
You get to your Blackfire account, get your credentials for Blackfire, and then add them to as environment variables to your containers. So this is you have just a one-click snippet, one-click copy snippets in the Blackfire documentation to do that. So you go to the platform.sh integration doc page. While you're being authenticated, you just click on the copy your platform var create a command line, paste them in your terminal, and you're done.
Okay, and then I run the application and do a profile, and then maybe change some code and do another profile, and then I can see that diff.
Yeah, instantly, yes.
It's fun to do the other way around, by the way. If you like to play with this type of stuff, a good challenge is to take an application that you're familiar with or not familiar with and see how you can break it. do that wget off to some really slow web service. Like try to call your Jira tickets or something and see how that changes your profile.
And actually, using Blackfire for such a thing, like you don't know nothing about one application that someone ask you help for. You activate Blackfire for it, and just do one quick profile, and it tells a lot of things. You don't have to know the application itself, how it's architectured or anything. It will the profile, the call graph will tell you anyway.
Or so another one that I like to do, if you're really interested in understanding database indexes, for example, is get your application running, profile it, go delete an index or two, and then profile it again.
Yeah, you can do that as well.
I mean, this stuff is fun, right? It's not just like utilitarian. You can actually play with this stuff.
Yeah, and Jérôme just mentioned a use case that is not that is rarely mentioned. But the call graph is also very useful to understand how an application is actually working behind the scenes. And when you discover a new application, having a look at the call graph tells you a lot about how it works. And it gives you an overview about the code base that is actually executed and how it works. And it's very interesting, especially if the application is not using a framework, right? If it is some kind of spaghetti code, if it's much more easier to understand what's going on with a profile instead of trying to have a look at the code and digging through all the files.
Right.
It's usually when we're talking about a profiler, usually we have performance in mind, but actually a profiler is a behavior of your application. It analyzes the behavior of your application. Performance being one aspect of this this behavior, and actually you can use it for debugging. for let's say you have this naughty bug that you cannot reproduce locally or on staging for some reason. That happens to anyone. Well, you can use this profile, this Blackfire for this, and try to understand why it does happen. And it will be much easier to understand with a profile.
And actually, as a matter of fact, we don't just have performance recommendations. We also have security recommendations. We have quality recommendations. So we have more than just performance when you are getting some recommendations from Blackfire.
And this applies equally to the Python and to the Go code as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you know which how high priority is the plan to add more languages to that list?
So we are working on a Ruby profiler. It's almost done. And we are planning to work on a JavaScript one at some point. And we also want to add JavaScript as a front-end monitoring tool as well. So
JavaScript front end, because everything we've talked about up until now is completely 100% back-end technology.
Yeah. We should have mentioned that earlier, but indeed, that's only about the back end. And being able to have some information about the front end, especially trying to correlate the time it takes for a page to be displayed and the time it takes for the page to be rendered in the back end, is very interesting and very useful.
That infamous time to first byte. That
exactly.
is the line of demarcation between the back end having done its job and the front end taking over.
Yeah, it's even more than that, because nowadays you are calling a lot of APIs, which means that to be able to display one page, you might have 5 calls to your APIs. And with Blackfire, you can correlate them, so you can have one profile which is linked to many other profiles if you are doing API calls. That's also, I think nowadays with front end and Jamstacks and things like that, it's even more important to understand what's going on with your APIs.
Incredible. Well, I am super excited about Blackfire.io. I was already, but this chance to talk to the three of you together, which is the first time I've sat down with you guys since you joined the team, it's only served to heighten my excitement. I want to thank the three of you for not only joining the company, but being on this show with me. It was certainly fun. If you are watching this and want to reach out to us or send love letters to Fabien to say thank you for the great open source software, that's certainly welcome at any time, and we can talk to you about Blackfire.io and Platform.sh and what it might mean for you. Tune in next week. We'll have another episode of Deploy Friday. I forgot the topic, so I'm not even going to say what it is, but it'll be posted and you can see what it is. Any closing comments from the three of you before we say goodbye to everybody?
Just wanted to thank you, Robert. It was very interesting and kind of fun to talk about Blackfire with you. And indeed, it was the very first time we had a chance to talk together about this topic. And I think that the future is really bright for us. And when I'm saying us, it's all of us. And indeed, I really think that 1 + 1 is way more than 2.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, then. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
And see you next week.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.